Young little noober doesn't know anything about programming, but wants to make the games like the ones on his favorite platform. He searches for beginner Roblox scripting videos on YouTube and finds one that's 18 videos long. He spends the next couple of days tirelessly watching every video and even follows the instructions given by the person behind the videos. But it seems like he has forgotten a lot of things he learned after watching these videos. Perhaps he hasn't been applying his new skills in practical ways, or lacks guidance on what to do next. These simple factors can prevent Noobert from progressing from a noob to an absolute pro. That's why I'm here to help him on his journey. If you're new here and have no knowledge of Roblox scripting, well then, what are you doing? Go click the link in the description to watch my complete beginner's guide to Roblox scripting. You're not welcome here! Okay, but on a more serious note, I believe this video will help you become more familiar with the fundamental aspects of scripting for beginners. So in essence, I have 7 challenges for you to try in this video, and here's how it's gonna work. I will describe the objectives for each challenge, and you will have the opportunity to try them out on your own. And then afterwards, we will come back to the video and watch me go through the process so we can compare answers. This serves as a review for those who have watched my beginner's guide, and also for those who are just starting out with scripting and want to assess what they already know. So even if you're a beginner scripter who hasn't seen my videos before, I think you should stick around since this video will be a great review for your scripting skills. With that out of the way, let's dive into the challenges. Alright, so the first challenge I have for you is print out a series of lines describing what things you are looking forward to today. And there are 2 requirements for this. The first requirement is having at least 3 print statements, because this is a series of print statements, not just one print statement. And the second requirement is make use of variables with string concatenation into the print statements. Now, if you don't know what string concatenation is, because I never made a video talking about it, then you can just follow what I do in this video and I will try to explain it to help you understand it. But if you already know what it is, then great, you can go ahead and get started on this challenge. All right, so how it's gonna work is I want you to pause this video and go out and try and do this challenge on your own first, and then come back to this video once you think you're ready, and then unpause the video, and then watch how I go through it, and we'll be able to compare our code together to see whether we both got it right or not. All right, well, let's get to it. All right, so starting off, we're gonna go to the right side on our Explorer, or just wherever your Explorer is. We'll go down the workspace, and then we'll hit the plus sign, and we will add in a new script. We're gonna call this script Challenge 1. And we're gonna delete this code here. Okay, so we're gonna write a series of print statements based on what we are looking forward to today. So in this case, what I'm gonna be looking forward to today is, let's write a print statement here. I am looking forward to getting a lot of my work done. And then we will write another print statement here saying, I am also looking forward to hanging out with my friends later today. Okay, and another thing I will probably look forward to is, I am hoping that my friends and I will go out to eat at my favorite restaurant known as Chipotle. Because I love Chipotle. Chipotle is my favorite restaurant of all time. I absolutely love it so much. If you've never had Chipotle, I highly recommend it. You should go and try it. Okay, and then I will write down one more print statement. I will say, finally, I am looking forward to sleeping to start the next day. So now, I have 4 print statements here, but there's one thing I forgot to add, and that's adding variables into our print statements using string concatenation. So let's just find something inside of this print statement that I can replace as a variable instead of a string literal. So let's say this one right here, my favorite restaurant known as Chipotle. What if I created a variable that can change this favorite restaurant to something different instead? So what we'll do is, before our print statements up here, let's create a variable called local favorite restaurant equals, and then inside of here, we're gonna set it equal to the string Chipotle. So this is going to be our favorite restaurant right here as a variable. But now how we're going to replace Chipotle here is we're going to get rid of this and make sure there's a space after the as, and then we're going to put in 2 dots indicating string concatenation. This is how string concatenation works. String concatenation is basically like adding a variable into other values to combine it into one. So that's pretty much what we're doing here inside of this print statement, is that we're taking the statement, I am hoping that my friends and I will go out to eat at my favorite restaurant known as, and then we're going to fill in that gap with favorite restaurant. Favorite restaurant is just going to be whatever we set favorite restaurant to, which is Chipotle. So here you have it. We have our series of print statements that describe what we're going to be doing today, and it utilizes string concatenation with variables. So if we go into the game, hit test, and then hit play, then we should see that, down here, I'm hoping that my friends and I will go out to eat at my favorite restaurant known as Chipotle. But if I change this to something else, let's say McDonald's, Mickey D's. If we go back into the game, then it should be switched up. Yeah, so known as McDonald's. So there you go. That is challenge 1 done. Does your code look similar to mine? Let me know. All right, the next challenge I have for you is create a kill brick. Some of you might know what a kill brick is, some of you might not know, so I'm gonna explain. So a kill brick is essentially just a part where when a player touches that part, then their character ends up resetting or they end up dying after touching it. Hence the name kill brick or kill part. There's 2 requirements for this. The first requirement is to make use of a touched event. Obviously, because otherwise this kill brick wouldn't even be functional if you didn't have a touched event. And the second requirement is check if the part is being touched by a player's humanoid. And if you don't know what a humanoid is, I understand that because I never taught you what a humanoid was. But if you know what it is already, then you're pretty much set on this one. And the reason I want you to check that is because I don't want the part to be touched by anything else that's not a player to fire the script. And then finally, the third requirement is use comments to describe the code. I want you to get into the habit of adding comments into your code so that it would be easier for you to understand in the long run what your code does, because when things get complicated, it's going to be hard to understand your code. So that's why I want you to get into the habit now of adding comments into your code. All right, as usual, pause this video, go out and try this on your own first, and then come back so that we can compare our code. See you there. Okay, so first we're going to create the part itself by first going to model up here and then clicking on parts. Let's just scale this a little bit so that it's distinguishable. We will go to the Explorer and rename this to kill part. And let's change the color to red to make it stand out. Okay, so now we have the kill brick itself, and now we have to create the script for it. So let's actually disable our challenge 1 script, because what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a script for every single challenge we do. So we'll go over here to the workspace, create a script, and I will call this one challenge 2. Because this is going to be the second challenge. So let's delete this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make reference to our kill part that we just created by creating a variable. So we're going to say local kill part equals game.workspace.killPart. Okay, and now we're going to create a touched event for that kill part. So we're going to say killPart.touched, and we're going to use a colon connect, and we're going to wrap it inside using a function here, and we're going to put in another open and close parenthesis here, hit enter, and don't forget about our argument of the other part that's touching this kill part. So we're going to say other part. Okay, so now we're going to check if this other part that's touching this kill part is a player. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to check if this other part has a humanoid. If it doesn't have a humanoid, then that means it's not a player. So first we're going to check if there's a humanoid by first defining the humanoid. So the way it's going to work is we're going to say local humanoid equals other part dot parent. And the way we're going to check if there is a humanoid is by using a function called find first child. And the way we're going to write this by saying colon find first child. And the way it's described over here is it returns the first child of the instance found with the given name. So this is the method we're going to use to try and find this humanoid based on the other part that's touching this. So we're going to look at the part's parent and try to find its humanoid. So we're going to say in here in quotations, we're going to try to find the humanoid. And we're going to check if this humanoid exists. So we're going to say if humanoid then, to see if this humanoid actually exists. And if this humanoid does exist, then we're going to say humanoid.health, because health is a property of humanoid. Health is basically just, the player's health. We're going to set that equal to 0. 0 indicates that this is the amount of health that it takes for the player to die. When it reaches 0, then the player is basically dead. So this is pretty much our script here. One more thing I'm forgetting is adding a comment here. So let's just go into the first line and we'll put in the 2 dashes saying this is a kill part script that let's say kills a player when they touch it. This meets all the requirements for our second challenge, and let's go into the game and hit test. So it should be able to work once my character joins to the game and then steps onto the actual part, then I should be dead. Yep, just like that, my character should be dead. All right, so it works just as expected. Let me know if my code looks similar to yours, and let's move on to the next challenge. All right, so from here on out, the challenges are gonna be a little more tricky, so I want you to be prepared for it. So for this third challenge, I want you to create a script that loops through multiple parts to change their color to a random value whenever you join into the game. And there are a couple requirements for this one that I want you to pay attention to. So the first requirement is I want you to use a model to contain multiple parts to be able to loop through. The second requirement is I want you to change the color property of each part using color 3, not the brick color property. There's two properties. There's the color and the brick color, but I want you to modify the color property using color 3 values. The next requirement is making use of math.random on each red, green, and blue value to pick a random color for each part. The next requirement is use a for or 4 pairs loop to get each part as an array. And then finally, just like the last challenge, I want you to use comments to be able to describe the code. All right, if you think you're ready, as usual, try this challenge on your own first and then come back into the video so that we can go through it together. First thing we're gonna do is create a model inside of Workspace. We're gonna hit the plus sign and then we're going to put in a model here. To explain what a model is, it's basically just a folder that can contain other objects inside of that model, mainly parts. And we're going to rename this model to color parts. Okay, and now we're going to create a whole bunch of parts. So we're gonna go to model, hit part, and what I'm gonna do is duplicate these parts by hitting Control D and then moving them alongside here like so that we have multiple parts to loop through. And it's important to note that on the Explorer, we have to take these parts, we have to take all these parts and we have to put them inside of our color parts model. That's gonna be important because the parts have to be inside of the model we're trying to iterate through so we can have them as an array and do everything that we need to do inside of our script. So that's the important thing. Okay, but now that we have our model, let's create another script. Gonna go into Workspace with the plus sign, script. Let's disable our challenges 2 script, and we're going to rename this to challenge 3. We'll delete this. And first thing we're gonna do is make reference to our color parts by saying local color parts equals game.workspace.colorparts. And now we're going to write a for pairs loop. If you did a for loop, then that's fine too. I'll do it in both ways. But first, let's do a for pairs loop. So how a for pairs loop goes is that we're going to say for, and then we can say the index, comma, and then the actual part itself, which is going to be part in pairs, and we're going to throw in color parts here. Now, what you have to be careful about is that color parts is a model. It's not an array or a table. So the way we can get everything inside of this model is by using a method called getChildren. So it works by putting in a colon, and then we're gonna say getChildren. Because getChildren returns an array full of everything that's inside of the model rather than the actual model itself, because that's not gonna work. And then we're gonna say do here, drop a line. And now our next requirement is to have random values for each red, green, and blue value when we assign a random color to each part. So we're gonna create 3 variables. We're first going to create the red value, which I'm just gonna say red val equals, and then we're gonna use math.random. Math.random. And as you know, a color value can range from the number 0 to 255. So our minimum value is going to be 0 and our maximum value is going to be 255. So that's pretty much how it's going to go. And then what we can do is we can just copy this and then paste it 2 more times into here. But this time we're going to change red value to green value, and then we'll change this value to blue value. So now we have 3 variables for each single random value. So now we're gonna drop a line, and then we're gonna say part.color equals, and then remember how we create a new color with the color property. We say color3 dot from RGB, and then we're gonna throw in our 3 color values. We're gonna say red value, green value, and then blue value. Oh, sorry, it's not value, it's just val. So we're gonna say red val, green val, and blue val. Okay, so this should be our entire script here. Let's just add in a comment here that describes what is happening. This is a color loop script that takes an array of parts and randomly changes their color. Okay, so we have the comment, And we basically have everything that we need here. So this should be all the requirements. So let's go back into the game, hit test, and then hit play. And what we should see is all the parts with a new random color. So as you can see, all of our parts here have a random color now. And if I close the game and then go back into the game, then the colors should be different every single time. So let's go back, and the colors are now a different color for each of them. So great, our script works. Let me know if your script looks like mine. Great work on this one. Oh, I almost forgot. Let's rewrite our for pairs loop into just a normal for loop. So the way it's gonna work is we're going to quickly comment this out here. And down here say for I equals 1, because 1 is always going to be the first element inside of an array, comma, and then we're going to write out the number of color pairs here using number color parts. And then we're gonna say do. We're going to replace parts because we're not getting each part inside of our for pairs loop anymore. Instead, what we have to do is we have to say color parts, and we're gonna have to indicate the index so that we know which part inside of our array is referring to. So we say color parts I instead. If your code looks like this, then this also works too. I just wanted to quickly point that out. The fourth challenge I have for you is create an operation function that does basic operations based on the arguments provided during each call. So basically what I mean by this is that I want you to make a 3-argument function that takes in 2 numbers, and with those 2 numbers, I want you to specify a specific operation that you want to do on those 2 numbers. If you want to do addition, if you want to do subtraction, multiplication, division, depending on what the operation is, I want you to make that calculation and then return that value at the end of the function. So there's a few requirements to take into consideration. The first one is that this function must take in 3 arguments. The first one is a string indicating the operation for what you want to do with the numbers, and the other 2 are the numbers that we're trying to operate on. The second requirement is using an if/else if statement to check what the operation is and does the appropriate operation on the numbers. The next requirement is to use a return statement to return that result that's being calculated. And then finally, of course, use comments to describe the code. So that's pretty much it. I hope to see you once you're done. Okay, I'm going to go to the right side, create a script, same as usual, challenge 4, delete this. Okay, so let's create our function. So we're gonna say local function, we're gonna call this the operation function, and I specified that it's going to take in 3 arguments. The first one is going to be the operation itself, that's basically just a string, and then the next one is going to be the first number, and then the third argument is going to be the second number that we're going to calculate with. We'll hit enter, that'll end it, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to create a variable that'll represent the result based on what we're trying to calculate here using if and else if statements. So we're going to say local result, and we don't know what the result is right now, so that's why we're just going to leave it as a nil value, because the result doesn't have a value right now, so that's why we're putting it as nil. And at the very end of the function, we're going to return the result, and now we're going to get into the main calculations with the if and else if statements. So we're going to use our operation to check what the operation actually is, and whatever the operation is, that's the calculation we're going to put into the result variable. So first we're going to say if operation, we're going to use the double equal signs to check if operation is addition. We'll check that first. And if it is, then we will set result equal to num1 plus num2 because we're adding the 2 numbers together. And inside of this if, let's drop 2 lines and write an else if statement. Let's check if operation equals subtraction. And if it is, then result will equal to num1 minus num2. And we'll do the same thing with multiplication and division. So I'll speed this up a little bit. Else operation equals multiplication, then result equals num1 times num2, which represents by asterisk. And finally, else if operation equals division, then result equals num1 divided by num2. Okay, so we're basically done with our function now. So let's write a comment up here really quick so that we can understand what this function's doing. To do. I'm bad at grammar, but whatever. Okay, so now down here, let's actually create a couple examples on operation. So we'll write in local result1 equals operation. For this one, we're going to do an addition operation on, let's say, the first number being 10 and the second number also being 10. And let's create more results by copying this, pasting this. We're going to do this about 4 times. So now we're going to rename these to result 2, result 3, and result 4. So this one we're going to do subtraction. This one we're going to do multiplication. And then this one we're going to do division. And we're also going to throw in one more result for an operation that doesn't exist. So we'll say no operation available. We'll say something like this, because no operation available is not something that will be passed here inside of this if statement. It'll just ignore all this and then it'll return null. 10 plus 10 is 20. 10 minus 10 is 0. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 divided by 10 should be 1. And then no operation available, this shouldn't even matter. So let's print all of these out with result 1. And let's just copy and paste. And let's go into the game and test it out. If we hit play and then look at our output down here, we should see that all the results should be what I specified them to be based on the operation. So great, it works just as planned. All right, let me know if your code looks similar to mine. And that is it for this challenge. The next challenge I have for you is create a player points system with parts that give multiple points on player touch. So basically, when the player joins the game, they're going to be given a leader stat called points. And there's going to be a whole bunch of parts lying around the map where when a player steps on it, then the game will add 1 point to their leader stat points. The requirement here is to use player added to give each player a points leader stat. And then we're also going to have to use a for or for pairs loop to loop through multiple collective parts. We're also going to need to use a touched event. We're also going to need to check if the part is being touched by a player's humanoid. We're also going to get the player object using players.getPlayerFromCharacter. Then we're going to add the points stat by 1. And then finally, use comments to describe the code. All right, pause the video, come back once you're done. Let's get to it. All right, let's create a model. Like here in the workspace, we're gonna call this point parts. And then what we're gonna do is we're going to add some parts here. Let's just duplicate these to like space them around just a little bit. We're going to put all of these inside of our points part. And let's just change the color of them to distinguish them a little bit. All right, so let's see. We've got our points parts now. Let's create a new script and let's delete our code here. Okay, so first we're going to create our points leader stat for every player that joins the game. And we're going to do that using a touched event. So we're going to say game.players.playerAdded.connect function. And then we're going to pass in a player as a argument. Then we're going to create a new leader stat by saying local leader stats equals, and then we're going to create a new folder, instance.new, and then we're going to say folder. And then we're going to put the leader stats by changing its parent property into the player itself. We're going to rename the folder, let's see, like this, to leader stats, and make sure it's in lowercase and it's spelled exactly like this, otherwise it's not going to work. So now let's create the points. So we'll say local points equals instance.new, and we're going to make this an integer value. And then we're going to set the points parent to the leader stats folder. We're going to say leader stats, and then we're going to change the name of our stat to simply points. And then we're going to give it a default value of 0. So this is pretty much what it's going to look like once we join the game. Each player is going to be given a points stat inside of their leaderboard. But now let's create functionality for our points parts here. So we're going to collect every part that's inside of our points parts model. So we're going to make reference to the points parts model by saying local point parts equals game.workspace.point parts. And then now we're going to loop through each item that's inside of the points parts model. So we're going to say for, and then for our index variable, it doesn't matter what it is because we're not going to use it. I'm just going to say index, and then we're going to say point part, which is going to represent each of the parts inside of the model in pairs, and then we're going to throw in our points parts model here. But don't forget, we're not just saying points parts because point parts is a model, but we want an array of it. So we're going to say with a colon, get children, and then we're going to say do. We're going to create a touched event for each one of these parts. So we're going to say point part dot touched, and then we're going to create a colon, connect, function, and then we're going to pass in our other part parameter. And now what we're going to do here is, the tricky thing about this is that we have to be able to detect if a player is stepping on it, and we also need to be able to fetch that player object so that we can change their leader stat property, and I'll show you how. So first we'll get the humanoid. We'll say local humanoid equals other part dot parent, and then remember what we did in our previous challenge. We defined the humanoid by first finding the first child of the character model by saying find first child, and then in parentheses we're going to say humanoid, and then this time what we're going to do is we're going to try and fetch the player object, and we're going to do that by saying players dot get player from character, and we're going to be able to put in the character as one of the arguments by saying this. We're going to say local player equals game dot players dot, or no, sorry, colon, get player from character. And what we're going to pass in here is the character model. And in this case, the character model hypothetically would be other part dot parent, because that's also where we'd be able to find the humanoid. It's in the character itself. So that's why we're going to say other part dot parent. So now let's make an if statement that checks if the humanoid is valid and if the player is also valid. Then we're going to continue with our touched event. So in here, we're going to get the points. We're going to say local points equals player dot leader stats dot points. And then finally, we're going to change the value of points to whatever the value it is currently and add 1 to it. So we're going to say points dot value, and you have to make sure that it is value and not the points object itself. You have to be careful about that. And then we're going to say plus equals 1. So we're going to increment it by 1 every time a player steps on one of our parts. This should be the correct way to write down the code for this challenge. Let me know if this code looks similar to you. But let's go ahead and test it. So let's go to the game, hit test, hit play. And then what should happen is if we join the game, we should be getting a points attribute right here, as you can see. And if we step on these parts, and then we should be getting points every time we step on these parts. Now, just for the sake of this challenge, I'm not going to add like a delay when stepping on these parts to get points. Like just stepping on these parts, I'm just getting so many points all at the same time. For all you need to know, this is how the challenge should go. This is how the code should be. And other than that, I'd say good job on this challenge. Alright, the next challenge I have for you is loop through an array of parts that go invisible. Now, there are very specific requirements to this one, so I want you to pay attention specifically to this. So first, you should create an explicit array inside of the script containing all the parts that are going to be invisible. What I mean by explicit is that we're not going to be using special methods like get children on a model or a folder. We want to choose exactly what parts we want inside of our array. We should be able to create our own array inside of a script. Next, you should use a for loop to iterate through that array that we've created. And also, one important thing is do not use a for pairs loop for the sake of this challenge. You should also utilize a wait statement in between each change to a part when it goes invisible. And of course, use comments to describe the code. So if there are a few things that are unclear about this, then you could just follow through what I do with this challenge. But other than that, if you think you're ready, then go straight to it and then come back here. All right, so we're going to create a model as usual. We're going to call this model invisible parts. Okay, then we will create a new part here. Let's modify this a little bit to distinguish it from the other ones. We will make the color of this one like some kind of blue. And then we'll just copy this, paste it. We'll just make 4. Let's make 6 of these. Let's make 6 of these parts. And then let's put these inside of the invisible parts script. And what's important here is we should rename every part to something different because we are going to be referencing them inside of our script. So that's why we're going through each one of these parts and we're going to rename each one of them so that they don't have the same exact name. Like this. Okay, so now let's go to our script, which I have just created a new script here. And let's first reference our invisible parts model. So we'll say local invisible parts equals game.workspace.invisible parts. And now here's where we're going to create our explicit array. So we're going to say local invisible parts array equals, and then we will use the curly brackets here, and we'll also drop a line just to make it look more organized. For our first item, we're going to say invisible parts dot part 1, and we'll put a comma here, and then we'll drop a line. Then we will do invisible parts dot part 2, and then we will keep on doing this until we get to 6 parts. So I'll just copy and paste this really quick. This is going to be a 3, this is going to be a 4, this is going to be a 5, and this is going to be a 6. And let's also get rid of this comma here. So now we have our explicit array. So now we're going to use a for loop to iterate through all these items, not a for pairs loop. Oh, I did not mean to do that. Okay, let's drop a few lines here. And what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to say for index equals, we're going to start at 1 because the first item in an array is always 1, and then we're going to get the number of items that are inside of our invisible parts array. So we're going to say invisible parts array, and then we're going to say do. So now here we're going to create a wait statement, but first let's go back up here to our code a little bit. Let's create a variable based on how many seconds we want the wait statement to be. So we're going to say local wait time equals, let's make the wait time 2 seconds so that we can really see the change. So we'll go back into our for loop here, and we're going to make a wait statement with the wait time that we set up there. And then down here, we're going to make reference to each of the part. So we're going to say invisible parts array, and then in hard brackets, we're going to put in our index. And the way we make something invisible is by changing its transparency property to 1. So we're going to say dot transparency equals 1. And there you go. That should be our script. Let's make a comment here. All right, this should pretty much be the code right here. So let's go to the game, hit test, hit play, and then we should slowly see in order all of the parts going invisible. So as you can see here, each one of these parts is slowly going invisible. Now, the reason that these might be out of order is because I renamed them incorrectly. So what I mean is maybe part 2 and so part 4 is here, part 3 is here. So I kind of switched them up a little bit by mistake. So the purpose of this is to be able to iterate through a model or a folder in a specific order because we made an explicit array. So that's one of the things I wanted to test you on, is if you were able to create an explicit array full of items and if you were able to use a normal for loop instead of a for pairs loop. Other than that, great job on this one. All right, this is the home stretch. We are on the final challenge. Or is it? Okay, so for this last challenge, I want you to create a player coins dictionary that displays the player itself as the key and the coins number as the value. And there are a couple of requirements for this one. I want you to use a player added event. I also want you to create a function that changes the value of the player's coins with 2 arguments provided, the player and the new amount. I also want you to use print statements to test the change in value. I also want you to use a wait statement in between tests to see the change. And of course, use comments to describe the code. I'm leaving this challenge with a little bit of ambiguity just to really see what you come up with and how differing your results will be compared to mine. So that's pretty much all I'm going to leave you with. You know the usual, do it by yourself, come back here, and then see your results. All right, so I just created a new script, challenge 7, and we'll delete this. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is create our own dictionary. We're gonna call this local player coins equals, coins, and it's gonna be an empty dictionary for right now because we're only gonna be updating it every time a player joins the game. So we're gonna be using a player added event by saying game.players. Oh my god. My apologies on that one. I'm so sorry. I have problems. Player added connect function. And then in here, we're going to put in our player argument as usual. Okay, so first thing, we're going to check if the player already is a key inside of our player coins dictionary. If it's not, then we're going to add a new one. So we're going to say if player coins, and remember our key is going to be the player object itself. And the way we're going to check if it doesn't exist is we're going to say equals nil. This means basically if the player is not in player coins. That's one way of saying it. We'll say then, and then so we're going to create a new instance of player being the key, and then its default value of coins, which is just going to be 0. So we're going to say player coins, and then as the key, we're going to put in player. We're going to set that equal to 0 because player is going to start off the game with 0 coins. That's what we're going to establish it to be. And what we're going to do is make a print statement to print out the current value of the player's coins so that we can see the change. When we play the game, the player coins should be at 0, and that's what we want to test. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a wait statement here by first defining a variable of how many seconds we want to wait. So we're going to say local wait time equals, let's say 5 seconds, and then down here we're going to put in a wait statement with the wait time variable, and then down here we're going to call in our we're going to call in a function that changes the player's coins, in which this is going to be a custom function that we have to create for ourselves. So up here, let's quickly create a new function. We're going to say local function set coins. And inside of our arguments here, we're going to take in 2 arguments. The first one is the player object, and the second one is the new amount that we want to set the coins to. So first, we're going to make a quick check to see if player exists inside of player coins, just in case the player is not in the coins database, and then Roblox is going to have code that's just not going to be able to run, and it's going to throw an error and things like that. So we're going to have to make that check by checking first if player coins, and then use player as the key. And this time we have to make sure that it is in the player coins database. So we're going to say not equal to nil. That's basically saying if the player does exist inside of player coins. Then we're going to change the value by saying player coins player equals the new amount. So we're just going to put in amount as the argument. And then we're just going to print player coins again just to see the change. So we're going to copy the player coins player, put it inside of here, and then that should be the end of that. Then we're going to actually call coins by putting it down here after the wait statement. We're going to say coins. The first thing we're going to pass in is our player object and the new amount, which we'll probably say 10. Okay, and then we'll finish this off with a comment by saying, okay, this should be the finished product. So now let's go into the game, and what should happen is that a new entry inside of our player coins dictionary should be added, which is us, the player, as the key, and then the value will be the amount of coins that that player has. So it's going to start at 0, and then we're going to wait 5 seconds until it calls in our set coins function to change the value to 10, and then we're going to see that change. So let's go back to the game, hit play, and we should see right off the bat that our amount is 0. But then if we wait 5 seconds, then it should be set equal to 10 because we changed our player specifically to set it equal to 10, which was our amount. And then we printed that value to check if the change actually occurred, and it did. So there you have it. This has been challenge number 7, and it should be the last challenge for this video, right? This video is titled 7 challenges, so having a bonus challenge is probably really unusual, but I like to make my viewers suffer. But also, I genuinely want to get you better at Roblox scripting by exposing you to as many challenges as I can throw at you. And so I will make this final challenge interesting. So don't click off this video just yet, because I think this last challenge will be beneficial for you to see. This last challenge is going to be a little tricky, so if you don't want to try it, that's understandable, but I still want you to watch how I do it. But if you do want to try it, then go for it. Using the previous points system, I want you to create a shop that lets you spend that currency on various items contained inside of a dictionary. So by currency, I'm referring to our points system that we made, where every player that joins the game is given a points currency. And some requirements that follow is to use a dictionary with the name of the item and its price as the value. It's basically going to be a shop full of parts where if a player steps on one particular part, that part is assigned an item name with a price. And when the player steps on it, then the player will purchase that item by subtracting their points by the price. So that's the point of using a dictionary. And to prevent users from buying one item more than once, I want you to create a bought boolean, quote unquote, for each item so that the player doesn't buy that specific item more than one time. And then, of course, use comments to describe the code. This one's gonna be a little tricky, so you can go ahead and try it, or you could follow what I do, or just watch how I do it. So first thing, we're gonna create a model inside of workspace. We're going to call this shop, and then we're going to make some parts here. So we'll just make it look like this. We'll make it a little flatter to distinguish a button. We're gonna make this green, let's say. We'll move this over here. Okay, and then we're going to give each item a name. So we're gonna call this one hamburger. Actually, you know what? Let's give each of them a unique color. So let's make this one brown. Let's make this one a darker brown, actually. Okay, and let's put this inside of our shop. Let's duplicate this part, put it on the right side. And for our next item, we're going to put in cola. And then we're going to make this one like a lighter brown, and then we're going to duplicate this, put this on this side. We're going to call this one fries. We will make this one golden orange. And then over here, we're going to create milk. We'll make this one pale white. Okay, so now we have buttons for each of these items that we want to buy. But now for each of these parts, let's add in a Boolean value. So that we can make that check to prevent users from constantly stepping on the button and purchasing it. So we're going to say bot. That's what we're going to call this. And by default, it's going to be false. That's what we want it to be. So we're going to copy this. We're going to highlight all of these. We're going to paste into selected, and all of them should be in here now. So every item should have a bought value in them so that we can check if the player hasn't bought it yet. And if they haven't, then we will set that to true and they will never be able to buy it a second time. Okay, so I also created a new script. So let's go on to the bonus challenge. Let's delete this code here. And let's first make reference to our shop. So let's say local shop equals game.workspace.shop. This challenge is basically an extension off of challenge 5 that we did. Over here, this was our points leader stat thing. All we can do is we can just copy our player added function. Let's just copy this and then let's paste it onto the beginning here. But the only thing we're going to change is our default value because we want to be able to spend our points currency. So we'll make the default value 100 instead of 0. Okay, so now that we have that, let's create our menu really quick before we actually go on to create the touched functionality. So we'll create our menu dictionary by saying local menu equals, and then we're going to use curly brackets and drop a line to make it more organized. Okay, so now for each key, it's going to be the name of the item here, like milk, fries, hamburger, or cola. So it's going to be formatted like this. We're gonna have hard brackets, then we're gonna have double quotations, and we're gonna say what the name of the item is. So we're gonna say hamburger, and then for its value, that's gonna be the numerical price. So let's make the hamburger $10 just because I feel like it. We'll make a comma down here, and then we will make the next item, which is going to be cola. We're going to make the cola like $4, and then down here let's make fries like $6, and then finally let's make the milk $4 again. So we will make this milk $4. Let's get rid of the comma since this is the last item in our menu. Okay, so now that we have our menu dictionary with each of its price, let's make a touched event for each of the buttons that we step on. So first we're going to use a for pairs loop to get each button. So we'll say for index, it doesn't matter what this name is, but what does matter is our name of each item. So we're going to say item in pairs shop, and make sure you use get children because we want to get the array and not the model itself. Do, and then we will make a touched event for each item by saying item.touched :connect function, and then we will pass in our other part parameter. Okay, so then we're gonna try to look for the humanoid and try to look for the player. So we'll say local humanoid equals other part dot parent :find first child, and then we will say humanoid, and then we will look for that player using the other part. So we're gonna say local player equals game.players : get player from character, and we're going to use other part.parent. So this is similar to our previous challenge that we did where we tried to find the player using get player from character. Okay, so now there's actually 3 things we're going to check. We're going to check if the humanoid exists, we're going to check if the player exists, and we're going to check if the item has already been bought. We have to check all 3 of these things to make this work. So first we're going to say if, And to easily separate these statements and to make it more readable, we're actually going to wrap all of them up in parentheses. So we're going to say if humanoid, and then outside of these parentheses, we're going to put an and statement here, and we're going to put more parentheses by saying and player. And for our final condition, we're going to say item dot bot, because as you know, each item button has a bot property in it, and we want to check its value to be false, meaning it hasn't been purchased yet. If it hasn't been purchased yet, then we will run this function. If not, then it won't work. So if item.bot.value equals false, because we don't want them to be bought just yet, then we will say that. Okay, so now there's two more things we have to do. One is to get the price of the item based on the name. And second, we're going to subtract our players' points based on the price. So first, we're going to get the item's price by saying local item price equals. We're going to access our menu, and inside of our hard brackets, the key is going to be the item name. So we're going to say item.name, because as you know, when you look for something like milk here or fries or hamburger, the name of these parts is going to correlate with the keys in each of these things. So if it's going to look for hamburger, we're going to use item.name and search through this dictionary. And if we find that name, then we will be able to extract the price with its value right here. So that's how we get the item price. So now we know what the price is. We're going to subtract that value with our current points, our player points. So we're going to say player, and as you know, it's located in our leader stats. We're going to say player.leaderstats.points, and make sure it's in caps. Points, and the way we're going to subtract it is that instead of using plus equals, we're going to say minus equals using the dash symbol. That indicates subtraction. And we're going to reduce the points value based on the item price. So we're going to say item price. And now this is what our final code should look like. This is how it's supposed to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the game, hit play, and let's see our beautiful product that we just created in like 5 minutes or less. Okay, so we have our hamburger here. It should subtract $10 from our points, so it should be 90. So if we step on this, I am so dumb. I thought I had it perfectly laid out, but no. Points is an object. We're trying to get the value specifically by saying .value. This is a mistake I make a lot whenever I develop on Roblox, and for some reason, always trips me up every single time to put in value in points instead. So you have to be careful about that. Okay, but now let's go back into the game and it should work. My apologies on my error right there. Okay, let's go in. If we buy a hamburger, it should subtract our points to be 90 points instead of 100. So let's hit it. Okay, and I forgot to update the bot value. That's why we have the bot value, but I never changed it. That's why Roblox still kept on activating the touched event, because I never updated it. So in here, in our if statement, we have to actually update the bot value by saying item.bot.value equals, 1 equals, we will say true. So now that bot value will be set to true whenever we step on it, it will not be false next time we step on it. So let's go back into the game, and I am so sorry for messing up. That's why this is the bonus challenge. It's kind of hard to do. But yeah, let's go into the game. It should be 90, and it should not subtract it any other time. So there you go. I'm stepping on it constantly, and it's not going down anymore after buying the hamburger. Okay, so now the cola should be $4. So our points should be 86 points instead after we step on it. So yep, 86. Fries is 6, so it should be 80. And then finally our milk, which should be, I think I priced it at $4, so it should be 76. Yep, 76. So now I've purchased everything inside of this game using all 4 of these buttons, and that should be the right way of doing this bonus challenge. And let's finally add one comment here by saying this is a shop system on top of the points system we created earlier in the video. Okay, so now we are done with this challenge. This was our bonus challenge. Let me know how you did. If you actually did this challenge on your own, then props to you. I'm glad that you were able to do these challenges. And let me know if you liked these challenges. You're one step ahead in becoming a pro scripter now that we've basically tackled a lot of the basic coding fundamentals inside of our challenges here. And I think this video was a great way to assess your knowledge on the things that that require you to have a basic understanding of scripting in Roblox Studio. So if you found this video helpful, then I would greatly appreciate it if you liked the video and maybe shared it, and maybe share it to other Roblox scripters that you know who want to take on a challenge like this one. Even though this is just a beginner's scripting challenge, in the future I might make a more advanced scripting challenge to really help you test out your understanding of certain scripting fundamentals in Roblox Studio, because scripting is not easy. But now, after watching this video, you are one step ahead in becoming a more advanced pro scripter. So I'm glad you were able to stick around. And if you have watched all the way through, then I really have to thank you for that, because this video is pretty long. So the fact that you're here still watching proves to me that you're really interested in this stuff. And I'm glad that I'm able to help you through these scripting challenges. So that's going to be it for this Roblox scripting video. If you enjoyed this video, then I would greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribe so that you can look out for more Roblox related content in the future. And share this video around to some of your other developer friends who wants to assess their knowledge in beginner level Roblox scripting. Other than that, that's going to be it for me. This has been Brawl Battle. And keep on creating things even if your doubts get the better of you. What you're making is going to make impact in people's lives. And with that being said, I will see you in the next video. Take care.